I'm going to call this meeting to order. It is the meeting of Finance, Budget, and Personnel here in the council chambers on Tuesday, October 1st at 5:30. First, going to identify any potential conflicts of interest. Okay, seeing none. Do we have any citizen comments? Any citizen comment? Any citizen comments? Okay. Moving on to the consent agenda with minutes of the September 17th meeting, bills and payroll, monthly position control report, Board of Personnel Actions, and Treasury report from August. Recommended action is to approve. Do we have a motion?
Move to approve.
Move to approve by Mr. Varsho. Do I have a second by
I'll second.
Mr. Rigel? Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Did I hear something from you, Rebecca? Did I hear?
Yeah.
Aye. Okay, thank you. Okay, we're not removing anything from the consent agenda. So we will move on to item number 6. Request to recommend council approval of resolution number 2024-42, authorizing submission of an urban forestry grant application, and it is presented by Mark Riskevich, City Forest.
The city is working to enhance and diversify its urban tree canopy through the best management practices. In the summer of 2019, a full-time city forester position was created to oversee the management of our urban forest and urban forestry programs. In the past 5 years, many accomplishments have been achieved, including improving the GIS-based tree inventory, creating a hazard tree removal program, diversifying our tree species planting program, and incorporating a 6-year pruning cycle for boulevard and park trees. Each year, the DNR offers urban forestry grants, which is a great chance for the city to seek more funding. The proposal for use of the grant funding includes removal of 75 ash trees located on public boulevards and parks being susceptible to emerald ash borer. The decision to remove the ash trees was based on overall tree structure, tree health, and high risk due to proximity to high-profile targets. These trees are scheduled for removal this upcoming winter. Our staff labor and equipment costs for removing these ash trees would be used to match the planting costs of 62 new trees. Our GIS tree inventory will be utilized for diversifying our tree canopy and selecting planting locations. Trees planted will contain no more than 10% of our current tree species inventory. Planting sites will be selected based upon overall space and overhead and underground utility locations. Informational door hangers will be provided to the residents receiving a newly planted tree, educating them about the importance of urban forestry, benefits of trees, and newly planted tree care recommendations. An informational news release will also be distributed and posted on the city's social media platforms to create awareness about emerald ash borer, its effects on trees, and recommendations if you have an ash tree on your property. The effort to reduce the ash tree population in the city is a must, given the threat of emerald ash borer. Our planting effort will need to be bolstered even more due to the increase in removals, and also removals outnumbering our plantings. 742 trees removed and only 581 trees planted since June 17, 2019. Although the insect is negatively impacting the tree canopy, we need to look at the positives. Being able to plant a diverse selection of trees and place them in optimal locations will lead to long-lasting urban canopy. The awareness and education provided to residents will also aid in the success of enhancing and prolonging our urban canopy. Recommendation: staff recommends that the committee recommends council approval of resolution number 2024-42, authorizing submission of the attached grant application.
Thank you so much, Mark. Does anyone have any questions for Mark?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Anyone a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Spiros. Any questions for Mark? Okay, thank you so much for that presentation. So we have a motion to send this to council for approval to apply for this grant. We have a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed, say nay. Okay, all ayes, the motion passes. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Item number 7, request to recommend council approval of budget resolution number 14-2024, reallocating $12,500 from the Wenzel Plaza restroom project to Brain Park pickleball project, presented by Justin Casperson, Parks and Rec Director.
Thank you and good evening. Yeah, this is just a clarity or a clarification on a paper trail, reallocating those dollars that were once committed to Wenzel restrooms to the pickleball project. So to keep that in order, we need a budget resolution, just stating that we're going to move that $12,500 from Wenzel over to the pickleball court. So I'm looking for approval to take to the common council at their next meeting.
Right, do we have a motion to approve this and send it to council for approval?
Move to approve.
Mr. Varsho?
I'll second.
Mr. Rigel. Any questions for Mr. Casperson? Right, seeing no questions. All in favor, please say aye.
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 All opposed, say nay. This passes with all ayes. Thank you. Item number 8, request to recommend council approval of budget resolution number 15, 2024, purchase of taxi vehicles, presented by Jennifer Selensky, Finance Director.
Good evening. The city operates a federal and state shared ride transit program. This program allows us to offer a reduced rate of transportation for underserved populations that may not otherwise have access to transportation. The vehicles in the fleet are owned by the city and leased to our contractor, which is currently running 8. The vehicles are purchased through the DOT program and HSV state bids, and funding for them is shared 80% federal and 20% city. Beginning in 2022, we have begun to receive our 3-year absence of getting new vehicles, somewhat caused by COVID and the delays in production. Vehicle requests are placed in the CIP program and then ordered when grant funds are allocated through that grant program. The table that is shown in your packet shows how many vehicles we intended to purchase and our grant awards. We intended to purchase 4. We were awarded grants for 5, and we've received 5 between 2022. It received those in 2023 and 2024. We should also note that we received more than we originally planned for in CIP because 2 of our vehicles were totaled. And the city did receive some insurance proceeds to cover those costs. So given the entire situation of vehicles that were ordered previously and now being delivered in 2024, we need a budget resolution to increase the capital equipment account in the taxi fund by $150,087. So staff recommends this body recommend council approval of budget resolution 15-24.
All right, I'm looking for a motion to send this to council for approval. If that,
I'll move to approve.
Mr. Rigel moves to approve. Mrs. Spiros is the seconder. Does anyone have any questions? Jennifer, I have a question. I'm just clarifying that the $150,000 that we're moving was covered by the grant. Is that right? It wasn't coming out of a general fund?
A portion of that does come from the general fund. That represents the total cost of the vehicle that we have yet to receive. So we have funding from insurance proceeds. We had borrowed previously in 2022 and 2023 in anticipation of receiving this backlog of vehicles. So there is fund balance available to fund the city's share of these purchases.
Thank you so much. We have a motion and a second. All in favor say, oh, sorry, any other questions? Okay, all in favor say aye.
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 All opposed say nay. That motion passes. Thank you. Okay. Number 9, request to recommend council approval of budget resolution number 16-2024 related to pay scale changes and contingency budget, presented by Jennifer Selensky, Finance Director.
When we were budgeting for 2024, we were in the midst of a compensation study update, and we did not know the results of that study and what they would mean in the general fund. So during the process of 2024 budgeting, we set aside $70,497 in contingency in anticipation of implementing the pay scale during 2024. But we didn't include those amounts directly in the departmental budgets because we didn't know where the budget would be needed. Since then, the plan was implemented as of July 1, and we have gone through and calculated the cost for the general fund, and we have included wages, Social Security, and the contribution to the WRS. And we have estimated that the impact on the general fund will actually be $76,208. The impact on the communications fund will be $5,247, and the implication in the internal service fund will be $5,883. We have also taken into consideration that there may have been budget available in other funds, such as the wastewater fund, or even the general fund, where there were vacancies that might offset some of the need to increase the budget due to the implementation of the wage scale. So with that, I recommend that Finance, Budget, and Personnel Committee recommend Common Council approval of Budget Resolution 16-2024, which will increase the budget lines in the general fund, internal service fund, and the communications fund, not to exceed $76,208 in the general fund, $5,247 in the communications, and $5,883 in the internal service fund. We have included in the packet an appendix that details out by department what we consider to be the amount needed for the implementation of the plan.
All right, thank you. So we are looking for a motion to send this to council for approval.
Move to approve.
Mr. Varsho moves to approve. Do we have any seconds? Mr. Rigel. Okay, any questions for Mrs. Selensky? Okay, no questions. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed, say nay. That motion passes. Moving on to item number 10, request to recommend council approval of budget resolution number 17-2024, transferring TIF District 5 Affordable Housing Extension Increment to the Housing Fund, presented by Jennifer Selensky.
So this year, we passed a resolution to close TID 5, and at the same time, we also passed resolution number 2023-63, which was the affordable housing extension, whereby we could collect one additional year of increment to be used for affordable housing. The 2023 tax increment collected in 2024 was recorded as revenue in TIF District number 5 and must now be transferred to the Housing Fund in accordance with the resolution that was passed. Therefore, staff recommends that the Finance, Budget, and Personnel Committee recommend Common Council approval of Budget Resolution 17-2024 in the amount of $430,761.13, which was the amount of the increment that was received in the final year that TIF District number 5 was open.
All right, do we have a motion?
Move to approve.
All right, Mr. Varsho, and a second by whom? Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Spiros. Any questions or comments? Right, seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, say nay. That motion passes. Number 11, request to recommend council approval of budget resolution number 19-2024 Street Department Roof, presented by Jennifer Selensky, Finance Director.
The adopted 2024 to 2028 capital improvement plan for the Streets Department included the following items. Replacing the roof on the main building west half, which was to be funded by debt proceeds of $180,000 in 2024. Replacing the roof on the main building east half, which was to be funded by debt proceeds of $140,000 in 2025, and an electrical service upgrade for the City Garage campus to be funded by debt of $75,000 in 2024. These items totaling $255,000 were entered into the budget for the internal service fund in 2024. Upon further analysis, including consultation with the city's electrical inspector, it was determined that the best course of action would be to postpone the electrical repairs until a master plan was established for that building, for those buildings. It was also determined that the city would be able to save money by replacing the entire roof at one time. At the May 28th, 2024 Common Council meeting, I proposed a plan to utilize $189,482,000 of ARPA grant funds and $75,000 of debt originally intended for the electrical upgrades to finance the entire roof replacement. That was passed, and on June 17th, the Board of Public Works accepted a bid of $214,642 for the repairs, and the Common Council accepted the bid at its June 25th, 2024 meeting. Also in June of 24, the roof-mounted air conditioning unit stopped working, and which fortunately coincides with the timing of the roof repair. And in July, the Board of Public Works voted to accept a quote for the air conditioning unit and utilize funding from the roof project to pay that cost of $10,940. Council approved the air conditioning replacement at its July 23rd, 2024 meeting. A budget resolution reflecting the intentions of the above meetings in the general ledger is now needed. With that, staff recommends that the Finance, Budget, and Personnel Committee recommend Common Council's approval of Budget Resolution 19-2020.
All right, do I have a motion to send this to council for approval?
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Spiros and Mr. Rigel, any questions or comments? I do have a question. Maybe this is for Mr. Turchi. If we are delaying the electrical work, is there a plan to evaluate that, or have we started the master plan for those buildings?
Well, right now, there's a lot of questions up in the air, specifically whether or not we're staying in that building with the redevelopment of 2nd Street. But I did talk to Tim, and what we want to do is actually reevaluate the entire thing, because we're not sure if the proposed electrical improvements are what is going to be current for the building, right?
Thank you. All right, so we have a motion and a second. Any other questions or comments? All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, say nay. That motion passes. Item number 12, request to recommend council approval of budget resolution number 2024-23-2024, continuing appropriations, presented by Jennifer Selensky, Finance Director.
At the end of 2023, in order to comply with our GASB 54's requirement of setting aside money as committed by council in our 2023 financials for items that may actually be spent in 2024, council passed a resolution 2023-62 in order to set aside certain monies for, at the time, we were in the middle of conducting a compensation study, recruiting for the Development Services Director, There is a set amount of money set aside for information technology, mainly related to our enterprise business solution software. And then there was a sum of money set aside in public works for a landfill claim that was ongoing at the time of 2023. These items were not included in the 2024 budget because the budget had already been passed. At this time, we have a two-step process where we set aside the money at the end of the year, and then in the subsequent year, we approve a budget resolution for those items that actually come to fruition. So in an analysis of actual spending related to these projects, I believe we send somewhere in the neighborhood of $300,000 aside. Last year in the resolution, we have not had any qualified retirements for our post-employment health plan payouts, so I did not request those to be added as a specific line item in the budget. And the comp study would not utilize the full amount that was originally set aside in 2023. The amount that is needed to be added to the 2024 budget for these ongoing items is $108,512. So with that, I would recommend Finance, Budget, and Personnel Committee recommend council approval of Budget Resolution 20-2024 for the purpose of increasing the budget in accordance with the items added to committed fund balance in 2023.
Thank you. So do we have a motion to send this to council for approval?
Move to approve.
Mr. Varsho?
Second.
Spiros, any questions or comments? Seeing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say nay. This motion passes. Number 13, request to recommend council approval of budget resolution number 21-2024, transferring $12,000 for consulting services for implementation of the West 2nd Street redevelopment plan, presented by Jennifer Selensky, Finance Director.
At the September 24th Common Council meetings, City Administrator Barg provided an update on the West 2nd Street redevelopment plan, whereby phase 1 has been completed, and where the Common Council voted to enter into a contract with the Vanderwall for phase 2 of the plan, and that amount is $12,000. So at that time, I was directed to prepare a budget resolution to reflect those approvals. So I recommend the Finance, Budget, and Personnel Committee recommend Common Council approval of Budget Resolution 21-2024, increasing the 2024 budget for professional services in the Economic Development Fund.
All right, do we have a motion to send this to council for approval?
I'll move to approve.
Mr. Varsho, second. Any second? Mr. Brigel, do we have any question? We have a question or a comment?
Yeah, just a comment. Just to clarify or add to what Jennifer just shared, the $12,000 is for the remaining 2024 portion. That phase 2 will go well into 2025. In fact, entirely go through 2025, bringing additional costs. But this is to get us through 2024 for monies we're not budgeted, because we only budgeted for the phase 1 portion for this year.
Any other questions or discussion? Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
All those opposed say nay. That motion passes. Number 14, request to recommend council approval of policy 4.800, procurement of goods and services, presented by Jennifer Selensky, Finance Director.
During a review of policy 4.800, procurement of professional goods and services, I noted that we needed some updates. In July of 2023, we revised policy 4.810, engagement of professional services, to note that the city would adhere to the Code of Federal Regulations when spending federal grant money awards for professional services. A similar statement is also needed in policy 4.800 for the procurement of goods and services. So that would be in your red line version, the additional verbiage at the end of that policy. Secondly, the Code of Federal Regulations also defines the micro purchase level at $10,000, whereas our policy has that level at $5,000. And I would recommend that we increase that limit in order to match our federal regulations that we would be following in the event of a grant. So with that, I'd recommend council approval or Finance, Budget, and Personnel Committee approval of the policy.
All right. Do we have a motion to send this to council for approval?
Move to
So
approve.
moved.
All right, I think Mr.
Second,
Marshall said it first.
Second, whatever.
All right, I'm going to say Mr. Marshall said it and Ms. Spiro seconded it. Okay. Any discussion or question? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say nay. That motion passes.
Thank you.
Okay, now we are on to number 15. Request to recommend council approval of 2025 budget request under Fund 205, Economic Development, presented by Steve Barg, City Administrator.
Thank you very much. Well, I'm going to give you just a short history of how we got here. I don't want to belabor the point, but I want to make sure that we can walk through what's happened to this point so everybody understands where we are tonight here on October 1st. So annually, we get a dividend from Marshfield Utilities. It's typically been handled through the Economic Development Board making recommendations to the council. But as you know, this has fallen now on the Finance, Budget, and Personnel Committee here in 2024 in the absence of the Economic Development Board. So I went to the people we get applications from, and we've gotten a couple of others beyond the normal candidates. You were presented back on in August with 6 applications. But just to know how much dividend money we're talking about, historically, we've gotten maybe in the area of $250 to $275 or even $300,000 as a dividend from utilities. Back in the early part of 2023, their policy was amended and a new feature was put in regarding investment earnings and a capital call being deducted and those kind of things. I think you're kind of familiar with the policy, but as a result, that number could vary from year to year. This year, for example, in 2024, we're getting $492,000. That's no guarantee that we'll get 492 next year. We could get even less than the 250 to 300 that we usually get. It all depends on the circumstances that play into that calculation. But we are estimating at staff level for $300,000. That's what we're going with for the 2025 budget. So anyway, you heard presentations from 5 different groups on August 20th and September 3rd. I'm going to touch on them right now and what happened on your last meeting on September 17th. So the Marshfield area pickleball community was asking for $80,000 for pickleball court lights. And your direction was to ask them to solicit from Visit Marshfield and see if they could get some money there. They did meet with the Visit Marshfield board on September 24th. I was there, and the Visit Marshfield board did commit $50,000 to the project, leaving a balance of $30,000 that group is looking to secure to make that project go. We also had a request from the Chamber Foundation for $53,000 for the business development director position, plus some ancillary expenses that go along with that, going to trade shows and some other things. And you suggested at that time that you wanted to see a bullet points and maybe leading to a memorandum of understanding as to what the projects and the deliverables would be from the Marshfield Area Community Foundation if we went into 2025 with this agreement. You have in your packet a list of bullet points, a 1-page document that lays out what they would intend to do in the year ahead. I started playing around a little bit with turning that into a memorandum of understanding, but kind of looking for what this body comes up with tonight as far as what that might look like if you choose to go forward. $37,000 for the Wenzel Family Plaza Coordinator position. This is an agreement we've got with the Parks and Recreation Department and Visit Marshfield. 40% for each of those two, and then, 40% for Visit Marshfield, 40% coming from the 205 fund, and then 20% from the Parks and Recreation Department budget. And this is kind of the 4th year of that 4-year understanding. You said that you're supportive of continuing that, but you did ask that as we look to 2026 and beyond, that funding mechanism, that plan be revisited for the future. Main Street Marshfield was asking for $30,000 for planters, $10,000 for planters, and $20,000 for various marketing activities. In the discussion, there were some comments made about maybe more support for the planters and maybe some questions about the marketing portion of their request. I did convey that to the Main Street Board President, and he has submitted a document that you have in your packet for tonight's meeting, further explaining how those dollars would be used, especially in marketing, but also I think more so for the planters as well, being a little bit more descriptive for your consideration. You did on September 17th say no to both the Communications Department request for $15,000 for videos for partner agencies, and then $5,000 for a shared service network for childcare from a group called Child Caring Incorporated. So you started with $220,000, and at the end of that meeting, you'd cut it down to $200,000. Staff, however, did introduce two additional requests on September 17th that we wanted you to consider. One being the annual $70,000 amount that we've typically funded, or it's been near $70,000 every year for the what used to be the facade grant and interior conversion program that we now call the Building Revitalization Grant Program. And usually we use that to see that the 3 or 4 projects get done downtown for some building improvements. The other thing we asked for to be added to your consideration was $50,000 for the Second Street redevelopment plan. As Jennifer Selensky just covered, we're trying to get money not only for the end of 2024, which you approved through the budget resolution to send to council, but also to continue phase 2 into 2025. And that's a rough estimation of the amount we would spend with Vanderwall as our consultant to continue that program moving forward. So that gets us to a total of, if you take out the 20 for childcare and communications and then add the other two, you'd be looking at $320,000. But as I said, that got chopped down by $50,000 when the pickleball group was funded by Visit Marshfield. That brought us down to $270,000. Hopefully this is making sense. So $270,000, and then I'm asking, me personally, I'm recommending that we pull off the facade grant and interior conversion, the Building Revitalization Grant Program for 1 year. It's been a very successful program, done a lot of great things over a decade, but we're going to commit $50,000 to the West 2nd Street plan, and believe me, depending upon where that goes, there will be additional contributions and commitment by the city in terms of implementing that plan for the west side of downtown. And I think 2025 needs to be the year where that's our focus for use of our available dollars, and then revisit the revitalization program in 2026 and beyond. So if you do that, you come out to $200,000. I'm suggesting that the remaining amount, which would be $100,000 from the $300,000 that we have available to us from the estimated dividend, be captured by the city of Marshfield for its expenditures related to economic development. This most likely be offsetting some of our staffing costs by the positions that do economic development work here for the city. I think we have some budget concerns here, and what these people do internally for us is clearly economic development and something that would be a valuable service in terms of keeping the 205 fund intent intact. So that's what I submit to you for your consideration tonight. And I'll take any questions. I do want to add one more thing, though, if I can, regarding the money that we would capture for staffing costs at the city of Marshfield. Some of you know that the Marshfield Utilities Commission is actually talking about having their own economic development position, hiring someone to do economic development. And it appears as if they do that, it's possible that they might reduce the dividend paid to the city using the funds that they would have paid to the city and put toward those positions. It's speculative at this point. I know they've had meetings and not made any commitment, but that could certainly change the picture on how this plays out in the end, if in fact they were to take such action. Now I'll take any questions.
Actually, Steve, I think because this is recommend for council approval, we need a motion before questions. Is that correct?
Yes, but you probably might want to have a short discussion as to how you want to do this. If you want to lump it all together, if you want to break them out, I would say that would be a fair discussion to have. And I see Andy's hand raised.
Yes, Mr. Rigel.
I'm going to skip the discussion, just move to sever all of these items to address them one by one.
Any other opinions? Second, that's a motion. Okay, that was a motion by Mr. Rigel, second by Mrs. Spiros. Any discussion or questions about that? Mr. Marshall.
We're going to go one by one for them tonight? Is that what you're,
I think
is that what you're discussing, Mr. Rigel? You want to go one for them right now tonight?
Right, the ones that we have not decided on. So like the last meeting we had, we decided on, I think, 3 of them, one that we committed to, 2 that we were not going to move forward on. So those we were not going to discuss tonight, the ones that are still open. So
So the ones that are on the next page there that Steve brought to us?
yeah, I just lost my train here. Okay, so we've been looking at the pickleball, the Chamber Foundation, Main Street, and then what Steve had brought up to us, those other 2, so a total of 5.
What page are they looking at?
I'm looking at 40 of our packet.
Okay,
I think you have 7 to decide on tonight.
yeah, there's 7 of them there.
7?
Under the
Uh,
organization,
Under the organization, keep going down.
Okay, I see it.
So we want to go
I
through
was
those?
doing the previous, yeah.
Okay,
Any other questions or comments about that motion? All right, we have a motion to address these one by one. We have that motion by Mr. Rigel, seconded by Mrs. Spiros. All in favor, say aye.
aye.
Aye. All opposed, say nay. That motion passes. So we'll just start with the list. So the city of Marshfield is the top of the list. So that we will need a motion and a second, and then we can discuss and ask questions.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Ms. Spiros, a second by Mr. Rigel. Do we have any questions about that? Any comments or discussion? Okay, seeing none, all in favor say aye.
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 All opposed say nay. That motion passes. Okay, the second is the Building Revitalization Grant Program. The recommendation is to not fund this in 2025.
Move to remove this.
Okay, so we have a motion to remove this from the budget. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Spiros. Do we have any comments, questions, or discussion? Mr. Rigel?
I'm not opposed to removing it for the following 2025 budget, but is there a mechanism you can put in place so we at least address it and don't lose it in the wash for 2026?
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. And if in fact this is your direction, I want to communicate very clearly to the Main Street Board and others that there's no intent to walk away from this program. It's been very successful. It's just that we're going to incur probably more costs than you're looking at tonight for the Second Street Corridor project. And I think that's needs to be our focus. But I totally agree with what you're saying completely.
But is there a mechanism then or no?
Oh, wait, okay, I didn't answer the question very well then. When you say a mechanism, I guess I have to ask exactly what you mean. To make sure that when we're talking,
Like some people,
to make sure we're talking about it again next late summer and fall, right?
right.
Yeah, okay, definitely we'll make sure. Absolutely. That's
Okay.
It's been an important part of our downtown, and we'll make sure that that's included.
Right, any other questions, comments, or discussion? All right, we have a motion to remove this from the 205 budget. And we have a second, so all in favor say aye.
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 All opposed say nay. That motion passes. The third is the Marshfield Area Chamber Foundation. We need a motion and a second.
Move to approve this.
Second.
Move to, Mr. Varsho moves and Mr. Rigel second. Any discussion or questions? Mr. Rigel.
Just a quick brief comment more than anything, but they did provide us bullet points and I do appreciate that. So I want to make sure that's understood and relayed. But then secondly, as a companion to that, I'd hope that they'd be ready to present to us how they addressed each one of these next time around. So just kind of a heads up on that.
Any other questions or comments? All right, I have a discussion. Something I just want to ask the group. There were bullet points, which was awesome. I'm just wondering if we have someone who presents, a consultant who presents to the city and says, these are the services that I can provide you, the city would say, we need those right now, we don't need those right now, we'll pay for these, we won't pay for those. And so I would just like to ask staff, has there been any evaluation of these bullet points for things that we may or may not need for this coming year?
Well, I think looking at what we do right now under the current model with city staff, I mean, certainly everything that Karen has done has just been so much appreciated, and she does a wonderful job for the city through her position with the Chamber Foundation. But looking at this list, to speak to your question, the most important things I think that are done through this arrangement with the business development director that we don't do at City Hall would be the attracting and retaining businesses, the visits, the site visits to companies. Those I don't think would happen with our staff, and those retention visits are very important. And the things that flow under that first bullet point, I would definitely say are important. And then the fourth bullet point, if you will, assist with startup businesses and entrepreneurial efforts. The work that Karen does through this position of helping new startup businesses, getting them plugged in with SCORE, helping with business plans, and just giving people a chance to understand how they can really create a business. Again, that's something that city staff has never been well suited to do. So just making a quick comment, those would probably be in my mind the two most important of the items on that list at a glance.
So then my question would be, do we more want to, instead of just saying we'll fund half a position, potentially we don't need all of those services that half a position would allow? Do we want to sort of develop a contract, sort of a consultation service? That would be asking the group. Any opinions or thoughts about that? Mr. Rigel?
My 2 cents would be, at this point, we're in October already. I think it might be a little too late to modify it for this year, but we could definitely consider for the following year, for them more time to prepare and put numbers to bullet points.
Okay. Any other thoughts on that? Oh, Mr. Berg?
Thank you. And again, I don't want to muddy the waters. I feel like I maybe did that earlier in this discussion with the comment about utilities potentially having their own position, but truly playing to what Councilmember Rigel just said, I mean, I'm getting a sense of what they would do with that position, what that position would be responsible for, and that may change the dynamic too. So seeing that play out in the coming weeks and months may give us a pretty good idea of the need that we have for this position as well, because I think they're looking at something that might handle some of the duties that are even on this list, as far as I'm aware. So I think that's not a bad suggestion.
I'm just going to clarify. Are you saying that this position, the need for this position might change in 2025? Is that what you're saying?
Well, I'm saying that, we could certainly contract with Mackey for portions of this the same way we would with any other contractor. We'll pay you X $1,000 to do items 1, 2, and 4 or whatever. What I'm saying is, and it's because Councilmember Rigel just brought up the idea of maybe looking at this in 2025 for a 2026 decision, this position with utilities being talked about, and getting our own staff on board, truly, as we all know we've had a struggle doing that. That may, if the dust settles on some of that in the coming months, that may help us decide what we actually need long-term from the business development position, or what we need in general from the community foundation to fill those gaps. I realize I'm maybe not helping you a lot, but I can see why you suggested what you wanted to suggest for discussion, and it's clearly a good idea to consider contracting. I'm just saying the playing field is a little bit fuzzy yet.
Understand. All right. I have a question for Mackie. If this position is open, are we, or maybe it's Jennifer, do we still pay for the position, or do we wait till it's filled? If there's a vacancy?
Our goal, Karen is staying on through the end of the year, is to get it filled prior to her leaving. If there is a gap, that would be made up by staff for any services. Probably myself.
Okay. So we would be still paying for the position, but you would be working in that position?
My goal is to have that filled.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. And then just one more question. Mr. Rigel had mentioned, has anyone worked out how we would know that these services, any metrics, or how we would have reports on entrepreneurs that are being helped, new businesses that are being started. Do we have any sort of guidelines for that?
I see you looking at me, and I guess rightfully so. Some of these bullet points, if you look at what Mackie has put together, are trackable. I mean, you talk about a minimum of 20 business retention business. We can report to this body, here's where they were done. Well, we don't want to get in depth about the business. We want to know that they were done. And there's other things that can be tracked through metrics. Some of the others are a little bit more fuzzy when you talk about, being part of activities, helping business people, new ideas, entrepreneurs. If no one comes to your door, there's no one to help. So, I mean, those are a little bit harder to get your arms around than the ones that are more quantifiable. And I just want to go back to a previous point. Whether you ultimately decide tonight or next year or whenever on the model of what we've been doing all these years, which is to pay for part of a position, we're literally paying a portion of the salary and benefits for that position. Or if you want to look at this more as a contract going forward, that we're paying X amount of money, whatever that is, for services A, B, C, D, that's a call that this body and the full council needs to make. And I would be supportive of either approach. So I don't want to find myself weighing in too heavily on that one. That's a call this body makes. But as far as being able to do metrics and keep track of this, Natasha, some of them, yes. Some of them are more difficult to do that.
Ms. Buros?
I agree with what Natasha's saying. I do think that this is something that we can't get accomplished this year, clearly. But I think for 2026 budget that we negotiate next year, I think that looking at this as a contracted position may not actually be a bad idea. And then, in the contract, we can tailor it so that the services we're getting are ones that we actually are looking to get and not just kind of a big basket full of things. So I think the conversation is definitely worth having. And I think that a good place to start that conversation would be, at the Finance, Budget, and Personnel Committee. So that would be a good thing for a future agenda item.
All right, thank you. Any other comments or questions? All right, so we have a motion to approve and send this to council. We have a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed, say nay. That motion passes. Get back. All right. The next one on the list is the West 2nd Street redevelopment plan. So we will need a motion and a second before discussion.
I move to approve.
Second.
Any questions or comments? Seeing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say nay. That motion passes. Okay, this one is under commitment, but we will go through the motions. The City of Marshfield for the Wenzel Family Plaza coordinator position.
Move to approve.
We have a motion.
Second.
Second. Any questions or comments? All right, all those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say nay. That motion passes. Main Street Marshfield. You need a motion and a second.
I'll move to approve.
Am I allowed to second? I second. Okay, any questions or comments? If no one has a question or comment, reading through that packet, I was struck again and again that so many of the things that Main Street Marshfield is doing is helping our tourism industry. And I very much feel like Visit Marshfield needs to step into this spot. I don't even know how much they've given to Main Street Marshfield, but they should be giving tens of thousands of dollars to this. They are creating a downtown that people want to come to. They're advertising. I mean, some of the stuff was advertising for downtown, giving it a sense of like presence on social media and things like that. All of that to me should be covered by Visit Marshfield. I don't know if it's too late to do that for this year, but they need to be doing the heavy lifting on that. Oh, sorry.
No, that's okay. I do know that they have historically made requests for grants from Visit Marshfield. And what I've generally heard is that the dollar amounts that Visit Marshfield gives out on those grants are fairly low. So they have gotten $1,000 here and $1,000 there, but not to the degree that, we're talking about here in this particular request. I don't think they've ever been able to get that level of funding.
They should, though. I agree with Natasha 100%. They should. Absolutely. I mean, yeah, we're pretty late in the process here, and I have no problem doing this because of what they do for the city. But going into next year, they're going to have to be looking into looking at other options, because it's not going to be something that there needs to be a little bit more shared thing with Visit Marshfield and what the Main Street does.
Absolutely. Okay, any other comments or questions? Any other discussion? We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed say nay.
Nay.
That motion passes. The last is the Marshfield Area Pickleball Community. We will need a motion and a second.
Move to remove this.
Second.
All right, we have a motion to remove it and a second. Do we have any discussion or questions? Mr. Rigel.
First, for clarification's sake, did we not just add another $12,500 to this, or contribute another $12,500 towards this $30,000 earlier today?
Justin, could you speak to that for Mr. Rigel, please?
The seed grant received from the county has to be applied to this year's project, which is currently ongoing. The pickleball light project is a future project scheduled for next year in 2025, so they can't be tied together.
Okay, but would that not also, if we apply the $12,500 to what's ongoing right now, would that not free up $12,500 in the future?
It could, yes, but we have to be careful on how we approach that. I mean, to tie them together would then ask the county if we tied them together themselves.
Okay, no, that's enough. Thank you. I just want to reemphasize a couple of things. First of all, I mean, those courts were already decimated, as it were. We were going to have to repair them somehow, whether it's pickleball, whether it's tennis courts, whether it was just bulldozing it. Something was going to have to happen. The pickleball group here stepped up, raised about $400K, and gave it back to the city. I mean, that's money that didn't come out of CIP, didn't come out of the general fund, didn't come out of 205. That's free labor for us and free money for us. As far as I'm concerned, giving another $30,000 here to push it over, I think just makes sense. Am I disappointed that Visit Marshfield didn't cover the full $80,000? Yes, I'm disappointed in that. But I think we can, step up here and push it across the line here. To go Alderman Warman, he had said, earlier, may not quote, paraphrase. If we're going to have this money in 205, why not spend it on ourselves? And I'd agree with that. If we're going to spend money on the 205 fund, one of the best places to spend is on the city itself. And this is a public park, a city park that we're spending money on. It's not going to a private entity that's going to be making money or anything else. It's going right back to the community. So I'm going to support this, but I'll get off my soapbox now.
All right. Any other questions, comments, or discussion? All right, we have a motion to remove this from the budget. We have a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Nay.
Nay.
So that means the motion failed. Fails? Motion fails. So then what? Do we make another motion? Mr. Bard?
This entire recommendation will go to the full council, and I'll just make very clear in what I send to them that this item needs to be resolved as opposed to just a regular consent item because it's 2-2. So the council will have to determine whether or not that funding goes forward.
All right.
So,
Should we just make it nice and clean and make a motion to have this particular item discussed at council level? Will that make it cleaner?
Yeah, that's probably a good idea. That way the consent can be crystal clear and no doubt about it. This won't be part of the consent. We'll make this a separate agenda item. That's a great idea.
Okay, I'll move to make this a separate part of the next city council agenda.
second.
All right, so we have a motion to make this part of the council agenda. We have a second. Any discussion or questions about that? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
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 Um,
All right, that motion passes. We have gone through our list. Am I correct? Did I miss anything? Well done.
Thank you.
Okay. We are now on to suggested items for future agendas. Do we have any suggested items? Mr. Rigel.
It's not so much mine as Mrs. Bureau's, but I just want to make sure it gets added on there that we should approach to Mackey sooner rather than later to give them ample time to be prepared to present to us something for the next budget cycle.
Duly noted, and I will do that.
I have two items. One is when I look at our budget and 70% of our budget is staff.
Could be.
I think it's 70% of our budget, yeah, ish
65 to somewhere in there,
in that.
give or
ballpark.
take. Yeah.
I'm wondering, when was the last time that we looked and said, in various departments, are we adequately staffed? Are we overstaffed? Are we just right? When was the last time we evaluated that at all? Or am I allowed to ask that question? I'm not. It's not on the agenda. So I would like us to have that discussion on our agenda about a staffing study. I would like Sarah to present it. You could present how much would it cost to do something like that? Is that something we would do across the board? Are there certain departments that are so far behind in our understanding that we would just want to focus on those? You could just make some kind of presentation. Awesome.
One quick comment regarding that.
Yes.
I can't. No, I can't.
Okay. And then the second thing that I would like to have on the agenda is our agendas are fairly long. And I'm wondering if we could have a discussion about if a position has been budgeted, that position is then vacated, but it's already been budgeted. Does it need to come to finance, budget, and personnel to fill it if it already has been budgeted? So I would like to have a discussion.
Duly noted.
All right. Any other items for future agendas? Okay. Do I need a motion to adjourn? I need a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Second. We are adjourned.
Thanks, everybody.